Welcome back to the Belonging Place podcast, where we are talking about how connection and belonging is the antidote to addiction and loneliness and other things like that. My name is Kylee Shields, and this is
Joseph Moore.
okay.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so let's just start off with talking a little bit about like who you are, what you do.
So I like to create.
Okay.
I consider myself a creator of things, and I also like to help other people to create things. Yeah.
Okay. Beyond that,
Sure.
like
Sure.
what kinds of things are you creating?
So so I love. I'm a singer-songwriter,
Okay.
recording artist. Been doing that for several years, and also am a filmmaker. I say that hesitantly because I'm in the process
Too
of
hesitantly.
yeah, because even though I went to school for filmmaking, there's still a lot that I'm kind of currently in the process of learning how to create those. Yeah.
And you are a voice teacher.
I'm a voice teacher. Yes,
Okay.
I also have some students that I coach, variety of different levels and experiences, and that's also fun to be a part of.
Yeah. And you are the sixth.
Sixth of 10 children.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
And uncle.
Uncle to we lost count.
Okay. Lots,
There's
right?
very, very, yeah, probably. I'm trying to think of over 30
That's a lot.
nieces
Yeah.
and nephews. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a question. You kind of did at the beginning, but
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you this. If you were going to describe yourself without any of the things you do,
Yeah, yeah.
or like any accolades, so like strip yourself of all the things that when you walk in a room or you go on a dating app or you're like, this is who I am, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What's left? What would you say?
Um, that's a great question yeah, it's funny how we often attach labels to ourselves,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what becomes our identity. Um,
And it might be easier for me or somebody outside of you to tell you what you are besides that, but I'm curious when you peel away
yeah,
all the layers, what do you feel like is left of
sure.
you?
I'll say it first, and then I would
Yeah,
love to
yeah.
hear what your thoughts are. I and here's one thing I don't want to get caught in is because we are a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
Instinctively, divinely, um, and relationally.
Mm.
But I think so. I'm not going to say the one thing that I am,
Yeah.
but I'll just kind of talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
some of the ways in which of really at the core, you strip everything away.
Yeah.
Um, for I'm a believer of God,
Yeah.
and so my first thing really is coming back to that I'm a son of divine heritage
Yeah.
and parentage, and so that's the first thing that kind of rules a lot of the ways in which I interact with people and the way that I see myself, even though a lot of times I forget that about myself. That is first and foremost understanding that we I always, maybe it's because I'm a teacher, I always speak in we
Yeah.
instead of
We.
me.
Yeah.
But I also think that's very helpful because even though yes, I am a son of God, I also think that because I have that knowledge, it helps me to realize that anybody that I talk to relationally, um, I can also see that divinity in
That
everybody
informs
as
your
well.
perspective,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So everybody that I interact with, and maybe this is another part of kind of how I see myself or how who I am at the core is um, I am a human being that loves other human beings, and I love. We'll probably get more into
You're a
this.
humanist.
I'm a humanist, but I love helping people to feel loved, and I mean, or at least from being an extension of divinity, which again we all are.
Right.
I think we have a responsibility to make sure everybody feels loved and feels comfortable. I talk to my friends all the time about how at the end of your life, and then maybe this is because the older I get, you kind of
The closer you get to it.
closer you get to the end, is you kind of start realizing a lot of things that really don't matter, and at your funeral or at your deathbed, like what are the things that people are going to say about you and what are the things that really matter? No, I've never been to a funeral where somebody was listing off statistics about how much money somebody made or or what their job was or how many awards they received or how many friends they had. I think it really comes down, for me, what it comes down to is how did you treat people,
How they feel.
how they felt, and
Yeah.
and you and I've talked about this
Yeah.
outside of this, but how it really is about family and friends and the close, those people that they're the ones that are going to speak at your funeral. And so how are you treating them? How are you prioritizing those people in your life? And I haven't always been great at that, but that is something that I'm learning as I get
Yeah.
older. So I love people. I love
People.
making them feel, or helping them to feel loved and understand that they're worthy of that love. That's not because of anything, like I legitimately believe it's nothing that I'm necessarily doing, or it's just recognizing that kind of going back to that core of we're all divine
Yeah.
people.
It's interesting that you say that. Stephen Covey has one of his 7 habits that is begin with the end in mind.
Yeah. Yes.
And as you talk about like, what do I want to have people remember me by when I die? It informs where you are, how you live today.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I'll share this. I recently went to this panel, and there was a very well-known person on the stage that was speaking, really extremely successful in every possible way. And not to like put judgment, but it was just an observation that the ways in, like from the get-go, the entire time he was basically kind of listing off his accomplishments. And yet you also kind of know a lot about this human being because he's been in the public eye, and you kind of see his family life and his friendship, or his friendships. And something that he said was fascinating to me. He said, "What is your legacy?" And on the way home, I went with a friend and I said, "What really is legacy though?" Again, in 20 years, nobody is going to remember the music you made, the films that you made. Maybe they'll remember the song, maybe they won't, who knows, but what you really will remember are your birthday parties, and who, how your parents comforted you in certain situations, or how your friend was there for you, or how you were there for your friends. All those things. Those are the things that people will remember.
It's interesting you say that, because one thing I want to say back to you,
Sure.
the filmmaker in the room,
Sure.
is that I walked through a movie theater the other day and there were these iconic lines from movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as a writer, right, I was so inspired. I was like, I want to leave a legacy someday that something that I write lives long past me. But it's not, going back to what you said, I'm not challenging necessarily, but what I'm saying is it's not so much the thing.
Yeah.
It's how you felt.
Yeah.
So those lines themselves don't mean much without the context of the movie and the music that was happening and the feeling that you feel, the lines that we share all the time, right? Generation after generation, because so it is true that you can leave a legacy in your creativity and what you do, but it's not the actual work, right? It's the feeling that you give people, and that coming back to this place, right? It's a feeling of them coming home, or it's a feeling of them feeling nostalgic, or it's painting with the music and the camera and all the lights and all. It's creating a story that they can feel like they can live. Right?
Well, and I would say not that legacy isn't important, for sure. In fact, a thought that came to my mind was, a lot of people leave with a legacy of love or a legacy of warmth or whatever that might be. I think that but a lot of times I think maybe we attach legacy to like the things we've done.
Oh yeah.
As opposed to, like you were talking about, a legacy of love for your family, a legacy in which your traditions and your family created these incredible human beings that are now doing good in the world. So that's the kind of legacy I think it does last.
And this guy, let me ask you if you think this. Part of why I wanted to do this podcast is I wanted to do this podcast with people in their becoming, not in their arrival.
Sure.
So when you stand up on a stage and you list everybody all your accolades and you tell them what they are, to me that is almost the most off-putting, not because you're saying you're awesome, but because you are entering a room of people and you're telling them where you have arrived. And most, if not many, of the people in that room are in their becoming.
Oh yeah.
That's why they're there. They
Yeah.
want to learn from you. They want to hear what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And so you've set yourself apart from the group. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If I
can see
come
that.
in and I don't have to tell you about all my accolades, but I just arrive where I'm at and then we enter the conversation. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's an
Do you
interesting
get that
thing.
feeling? Do you also see that?
Well, what's funny is, and I think a lot of people, I mean, there's very real world application of when somebody is like when an artist is releasing an album, a project.
Yeah.
A lot of times you'll see them like go through these different brandings. For each project, there's a different branding situation or whatever. And so in a way, when when an artist releases an album, for example, you feel like, oh, they've arrived at this place, right? And that is an arrival. But then there's something that happens in their life that completely like pulls the rug out from under them. And so what appears to be arriving all of a sudden becomes back to square one. And it's funny. I released an album 3 years ago,
which is amazing. You should go get it.
Oh, thank you. But and the whole called The Deep End.
Okay.
On all streaming platforms. No, it's always uncomfortable promoting your stuff. So thank you for doing it for me. But it's funny because the whole premise of this album was each song dealt with a certain experience where I was kind of thrown into the deep end of life. And I was like so excited. It took me forever to write and collaborate with a lot of incredible people, release the album, and am so grateful for like the messages that people have sent me, that how it's impacted their lives. Like that is an incredible thing. But then you're like, oh, but now what's next? You know, we did a little tour. I did a little tour with some of my buddies to kind of promote the album and all those things. You know, and I'm an independent artist. So like when I say I went on a tour, it was a house tour. To different locations. So it wasn't like I wasn't playing arenas or anything. But it was an arrival. But after that album was birthed, I quickly realized that I needed something else to, I don't know, to take up my creative.
Well, and it's interesting that you say need, because I think this is the thing about creatives, right? Some people will write a book or do a song and feel great in their legacy of life.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like musicians, artists, people who need to create, they will do all this work and they will arrive at this, and then they I don't think they need to, as much as they're just like, okay, now I need to take a picture and a collection of the next how many years of my life experience, right? And making an album, making a film, you see the arrival when you watch it or listen to it. You don't really know unless you go behind the scenes. We're doing a lot more behind the scenes these days about how much work, right? We're 2 years behind or 3 years behind a movie, or we're 10 years behind an album, right? Or whatever that is.
Well, and it's funny because I also realize how much I enjoy the journey, and not like in the most, you know, you hear that all the time, like enjoy the journey, or but it really is that, like that's the process that I love the most, is when you're in creation mode. I mean, I'm currently working on my next project that I don't know when it's going to release, but I just have started writing with people again, and it's been so cool because I'm working with different people. I mean, some of the same people, but I'm working with people that I've been wanting to collaborate with for a while. And yeah, it just seems like there's like these little rebirths that happen all the time. And I think that I had a teacher in college, incredible voice teacher, an incredible soprano in the classical realm. And she said, if you ever feel like as a singer, because we mostly, you know, studied singing. My undergrad was in vocal performance. But she said, if you ever feel like you've made it, you're going to lose it. And I think that it just kind of imprinted in my mind. You know, it's the fixed mentality as opposed to the growth mindset, right? And so where if you think that you've mastered something or whatever, then it's going to be harder to progress.
Yeah.
And so
I want to ask you a little bit about,
Sure.
I'm going to dig into that.
Yeah.
There's a writing term that is called in media res. it means to start in the middle of the story.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's like an early you, a middle you. I'm going to jump into, because I'm a part of this part of the story. You said you love the journey of like making a project. Let's go back before the deep end.
Sure.
And maybe 10 years before the deep end. And you are coming to Utah, and you are collecting. Because if I were to talk about who you are, you're a people collector. You're a maven. You're collecting artists. And you are mentoring them, whether officially or unofficially, right? And you are putting, I would say, a lot of your energy into other artists.
Right.
So much so that the friends that you have around you, or what I call your belonging place, the place that you feel safe, the place where you feel like you can fail, the place where people will tell you what's up, are kind of saying over that period of time, hey, Joseph, how about we focus on you? How about you make an album? How about you? And I want you to talk to me a little bit about what was going on in that need or desire to be growing other artists. Because this is something that I'm interested in hearing your perspective about what was going on.
That's a good question. And good.
Just like it seemed to me like you were wanting to create a belonging place for artists. That's what I call it. But
Well, it's funny. Like if you go back to growing up, first of all, growing up in a family that has so many kids. You have an automatic support system. And by the way, I know that not everybody has, even with big families or small families or whatever, not everybody has the same experience, but I was very, very grateful for the experience that I had growing up, where I felt like I had, 11 best friends, and my parents and my siblings, very supportive, had your back. Like you just felt like, and regardless of like little disagreements or anything that you have with them, it was like you always knew that they would be there for you and all those things.
And you can always go home.
Right? And so that was my first experience with that. But then you get to, middle school, and I loved music, so I joined choirs. And there's scientific research that says that when you're in a choir, not only does the music affect you, but also the community that is in that belonging place is like they're, I think I don't have any statistics, but I've read a couple of articles that say that it just having that belonging, that community of being in a choir, you are happier.
I'm sure there are people that are listening to this podcast that would say that saved their lives. In high school, or totally. the play family, the musical family, or I would eat lunch at school with my choir friends. I moved the summer before my senior year of high school, and I would credit a lot of my ability to assimilate and feel seen and heard to lunches with the choir nerds. I mean, I'm in there. I'm calling myself that. But going back to this like safe space of like-minded people, right?
So it moved from, and obviously my family has always been a belonging place for me as well. But you have these experiences in choir, or if you're, I played sports growing up as well, like band, whatever it is that you kind of find that, you kind of find that belonging place. And then you graduate high school and you go to college, and I studied music in college, so I was in a choir there, and that we went on international tours, and you get so close to people, they become your family away from home. But then you graduate and you get into the real world.
This is the big cliff that a lot of people get to, right? They're like, I don't have a structure to put my tribe.
And you may go and get a job first as an intern or entry-level position, and all of a sudden you're like, where are my people? And then your family,
literally,
who is always there for you, but they start getting married and having their own families,
or they're in a different stage, or they're
and so all of a sudden you have these like splinters of relationships and community, where you're going, where is my belonging place? Where's my community? Where's the people that I can go to? And again, there's always friends and family that are there, But as that
Sometimes I
community,
think for
yeah,
you, but like if we're
yeah,
talking to our audience, anytime someone does a change or transition,
yeah.
they may have to leave their friends or their
Oh
family
yeah,
to
yeah,
pick up new, right? Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. And for me, this is something I've learned in just in the last couple of years, um, how hard it is to let go of people as well that you once held so close that you thought we're going to be forever friends. We're always going to talk. And then all of a sudden one day you wake up and you're like, wait, what? Nothing happened per se, but you just all of a sudden they're not in each other's lives anymore. But you kind of, once you get into the workforce, or maybe you do get married and you're taking care of your family and you kind of like isolate, because your family becomes your priority, and then you're kind of going, wait, yes, my family is my belonging place, but at the same time, what happened to my friends and what happened to these other things that I'm involved in, and if you're either working, um, a 9 to 5 job or whatever job that you're working in, um, either that your work friends become your family, or they just stay work
Yeah,
friends.
yeah,
But then those start to become somewhat of your community, but that doesn't always translate into belonging.
right.
I've worked in places where, even though I loved the people I worked with, um, it definitely wasn't a feeling of belonging. Where you, or I've worked at some places where I was like completely different than everybody
Mm.
else, and it's funny because even as adults you
The
can be in,
opposite of belonging, right?
yeah, yeah, where even in as adults you can also feel this feeling of, wow, they really don't want me to be a part of this, or they're making fun of me because of things, that the ways in which I operate. And then and also just people change, and some of the people that you used to belong with all of a sudden are skeptical of your success, or for some reason they come back around and they're like, yeah, why do you think that you're special, or just all
Yeah.
sorts of different things. um
So what
yeah.
was it about you coming to Utah, looking
Right,
around?
right,
Because I watched this happen. I
sure.
watched you build what I've been calling a well.
Hmm.
Like in the scriptures, that's where everything happened. The
Sure.
water, the love stories, the
Yeah,
like
yeah.
teaching. This is the place. We don't have these in America, or like we have pubs maybe, right? We
Yeah,
have like bars, we have skating rinks. We have
yeah,
a few places that people go, and no matter who you are, that you can create. But I watched you sort of create a well, and I'm curious because I was on the outside watching it.
yeah,
What was going on the inside for you when you were like, okay, we're all kind of here, we're doing our thing?
yeah. Well, funny enough, this is something that I've had to learn as a child. When I was young, I was really quiet. I was really shy, to the point where if somebody was talking to me, my eyes would start watering, because I just hated attention. Which is funny that I'm in film, or sorry,
Film
that
and
I'm a
music
singer
and
and I
yeah.
perform and all those things. I've had to really overcome some of that stage fright, and getting over that. Um, but it came from a young age of oftentimes being left out, because I wasn't. I mean, and I would say I had really incredible friendships growing up as well, and really close friends. But in your teenage years, sometimes people say things, or sometimes people, without meaning to. Um, but when you have a big group of young boys who are 14, 15, you're bound to say things that might be offensive or whatever. And there were a couple of times where, it was said, well, you're not the most exciting person to be around, and as a young kid, you just kind of like, you're kind of like, wait, so is that how they feel about me? Is that how everybody feels about me? Am I like, and then,
I'm the
and
boring kid.
yeah, I'm the boring kid, because I like, and again, I'm able to look back now and go, 14, 15-year-old boys, they're just wanting to have fun. But I was kind of strange in that way. I like to talk to people, and I don't know, like, growing up in a big family, I just had these great conversations, and um, again, I feel really blessed. We'd have disagreements, or times where we'd be upset, or whatever it was, but with my older siblings, with my brothers and sisters, like, I don't remember a time when they like were where they wouldn't protect me if I needed it, and that
Yeah.
was a huge thing for me. as a quiet, shy kid.
Yeah.
So that being said, kind of bringing it back, that feeling, because there were so many times where I felt like I didn't belong, or I was,
Othered. Yeah.
I wasn't a part of the group, or I wasn't cool enough, or whatever it might have been. I made a decision when I was young in my life, that I wanted to be a place where people would never feel that around me. And so even in choir, this place that was my community, there were people that would say things to me that were like, you're, for whatever reason, they would say things that were not kind, and wanting to put me down or whatever. And I said, well, I never want anybody to feel that way with me. So those young formative years where I had to make a decision, like, I want people to feel like, regardless of how close I ever get to them, I want them to feel like they belong,
To be seen, that they matter.
Yeah. But I found that, especially after, because when you're in college or in high school, there are structures in place that they facilitate you belonging to groups and organizations and
you can
clubs.
tribe, right?
Yeah, you can try, be on a sports team, whatever. But outside of that, it gets more difficult. And so
it's almost like the gates open at college and they're like, great, you've had the ability to tribe all these places, sort of not even like organically, but they're like there, and then you join up, right? And you feel this sense of belonging and this sense of like, these are my people. And then they open the gates and you're like, good luck.
Yeah.
Really, right? This is kind of why I decided to do this topic in this podcast, was finding people who, then what did you do, right? So then what did you do, Joseph?
So well, first of all, I went to school after I finished at BYU-Hawaii. I went to Berklee College of Music and felt belonging there, but it was like in Boston, like way far away, but still found a belonging place there. Moved to Nashville and did music, singing, songwriting there. Found a family there and thought I was going to be there the rest of my life. And then, funny enough, I felt really strongly that I needed to move closer to family in Utah. I was born here, but I'd never, I think we moved when I was like 4 or 5 or something. And so didn't really have an experience there, but I had a ton of family that lived out here. And it was just kind of...
Some of your Nashville friends had moved out here, right?
Some of my Nashville friends had moved out.
Some of your BYU-Hawaii friends were here.
Yeah. And my goal was always music. And so when I left Nashville, before I left, everybody said, oh, you're giving up your dream. You're giving up, all these things. I had no idea that there was a music scene in Utah. So
nobody did. I'm just kidding.
Well, no, I mean,
we actually have a deep history of music, right?
Oh yeah. Well, and for a long, like decades. And so I just wasn't familiar with the Utah scene. And so when I moved here, we're in Utah, by the way. When I moved here, it was just kind of like, there was just nothing other than my family members, which was great to reconnect with them. But it was kind of like this thing that I had worked for years to try and do music and be in a music city, just was like pulled out from under me. And I felt like I had to kind of start over in a lot of ways.
Let me pause for a second. Sure. The story. I think at this point, and why I'm highlighting this part of your life on this podcast, at this point, for most artists, they dig into themselves and they say, how can I create music here? Or who can I find that can be in my band, or who can play, you're a singer, so who can play the piano for me? And how do I do that? Right. This is a big pivot that I see of people who value creating belonging and people who are trying to belong.
Yeah.
Does this make sense? Okay. Unpause where you're in the story. Sure. You're like, okay, I don't know.
Sure. Well, and I will say, like, going back to Nashville right before I left, when I was there in our church group, there was also kind of this need to gather people. And I love the word gather. Yeah. Because it very much has to do with belonging. Yeah. But it's like going back to like another part of who I am at the end of the day. Yeah. I love bringing people together. I love the process of people becoming friends. Like if I can be in the room.
You do not want the stars to miss each other.
Oh yeah. If I have 2 friends that are amazing, if I can introduce those friendships, I call them friend mergers, and that sounds really formal, but it's more so just, it makes me so happy when great people meet each other. It
also pains you if they
Yeah.
ships passing in the night.
Yeah. Or I'm like, oh, they didn't get along like I thought. I
Or
don't
they
know
didn't
why.
actually meet each other,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
And I'm like, oh, yeah. It just brings me so much joy when great people meet each other. And so, so I didn't know it at the time, but that was something that I started doing
In Nashville.
in Nashville with other friends who felt similarly. Like we wanted to create this place, and because of that, all sorts of cool things happened.
It's I think gathering places are generative, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah,
generate. You bring people together, and then it's like almost like a synthesis type of thing.
yeah, yeah,
Us together makes even more,
yeah,
right? Us
yeah.
individual people in a gathering spot creates more value of whatever it is,
Oh
right?
yeah, and I'm a huge fan of also of ships rising
Yeah.
together, right? So like if we can help each other and in a genuine way, not like I'll do this for you if you do this for me. It's like I'm
Not a
going to
quid
do
pro
it
quo, but
because I genuinely want you to succeed.
yeah.
Um, it can't not help but come back to you. But I have this conflicting thing of obviously you're wanting to be successful, so you put yourself out there and all those things. But I think that if you can have more of a kind of a multiplier or abundant mentality where it's like, look, if I just want to help everybody be successful, then I'm gonna find success myself. And so when I moved to Utah, and it was just if I there I will say this, there were some music groups
Pockets.
pockets
Yeah.
where when I first got here, it was really hard because they had already had kind of their pocket, and kind of the music scene in Utah is incredible. There's so much support, but in any scene and anywhere you go, there are going to be like hierarchies, right? You're gonna see people that have been here for a long time that are having a certain level of success, and so they kind of earn a different realm than somebody who's just kind of starting off.
Mm-hmm.
And when I moved to Utah, I was kind of starting over with my community and network and everything. So it was really hard for me to get into I would go to shows, I'd meet people, I'd want to write with people. And thankfully, there were some wonderful people that welcomed me in. But there were also
Barriers.
barriers and people that weren't as welcoming, or kind of like a feeling of, well, in this area you got to work your way in,
Or
kind of
this is
thing.
how we do it
Yeah, this is
here.
how we do it, and if you
Yeah.
don't fit into this, then you're not accepted. Again, there's also wonderful people that are like, you know, welcoming you in and going, yeah, if you do this and this and this, it's going to help you. And so I tried not to get into a victim mentality or being like, yeah, nobody is, helping me
Nobody
out
likes
or
me.
anything like
Everybody
that.
hates me.
Yeah.
Guess we'll go eat
Yeah,
rice.
yeah. Like I really try not to do that. And I made a goal early on that I would never allow myself to be tainted. Disappointed, yes. I've been disappointed and discouraged, feel like I'm going to give up, all those things. Treated not great for sure, but I never wanted to allow it to get to a point where I was tainted by
Mm,
it, where I could flip it, I could be optimistic, all those things, not negating my feelings, not
right.
all those things, like recognizing and feeling them, but also going, you know what? But at the end of the day, if I want something different, I have to change my mentality or how I'm doing something, right?
Can I also add,
Sure.
if I want something different, I might have to build it.
Oh, yes, yes. And so, leading back to the question is, um,
If I don't see what I want,
yeah,
right?
yeah, you create it, and so,
Which
and
not everybody has that mentality.
right,
This is why I'm so pointedly getting
yeah,
back to this. This is like I'm like a dog with a bone, because it's very natural to you to go back and look at it, but not everybody. I want to foster this
sure,
thinking that rather than I need to find some place to belong,
yeah,
which is one way to look at the world, and I have something to offer, I will create a
yeah,
place where people can belong. I think there's not enough of that.
yeah, yeah,
There's not enough people who feel like they can stick their neck out or do it. So here
yeah,
you are, you're like, some people are helping me. I want to be an artist. There's these pocket of people, but it seemed to me from the outside that there really wasn't this, I'm gonna call it a collective. I know this
yeah,
is a kind of
yeah.
there wasn't like a place for people to foster other people. And so you do what?
Well, so we started. I had a good friend that I was living with at the time, and he was like, hey, I think, and thankfully he kind of pushed me because I'm also an introvert
Yeah.
and am shy still a little bit. A lot of people I say that and they're really surprised, but because maybe I've developed over time, but I'm not. I actually have no problem going up and talking to somebody or putting myself out there, but it does take a lot out of me.
Yeah.
And so,
It's like the battery, right? It
yeah,
doesn't fill the battery.
yeah. But I started going to open mics. I started going to local shows, and I started seeing people that were kind of in a similar situation than I was. And then together with my friend, we said, well, let's do what we call music nights. Let's invite some people over that play music and kind of see what happens. It's a good way to connect and to kind of, find other songwriters that I may want to write with or whatever it might be, or record with.
Showcase people.
Yeah, so we started having these music nights probably on a monthly basis. And the first time I think there were like 7 or 8 people, and then
I was one of
slowly,
those.
yeah, Kylee was at the very beginning of those. Um, and it was just this opportunity for people to come and sing in a place where a big piece of it was to connect, like the connection, being able to be in a space.
Whether you were performing or whether you were behind the
Yeah,
scenes,
yeah,
the whole thing was a gathering place, a belonging
yeah,
place, a connecting place, right?
yeah, a place where you could feel safe trying out new songs, performing maybe that for some artists, like they'd never performed on the velour stage or another place, and just having a space that would foster that kind of feeling.
You guys even brought in a couple really young
Oh
15,
yeah,
16-year-olds, and
oh
you've
yeah,
got this late 20s, early 30-year-olds mostly. And then, here
yeah,
comes this 15-year-old or 16-year-old. I remember
yeah,
thinking, gosh, what a great opportunity. What a
yeah.
crazy opportunity for this
Oh yeah,
kid. And I loved watching that.
yeah. We have a good friend who she taught all these young kids, and she
Yeah.
said, well, I'll come with them. And what was so fascinating about it too is a lot of times we'd have their parents come, which was also a really cool experience, because you have all these like cool musicians who are also like with these parents and their kids, and yet that fostered this. It was just a
Community.
really interesting dynamic,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so it was really fun to kind of see that growth. And every time it got bigger and bigger, and more people came. And I remember at one point, after I was here for maybe 2 years, maybe, I decided to move or go stay in Colorado for a couple of months. And we have this picture, and there were probably, I don't know, 100 people. And throughout the night, it was just kind of this open house where you could come in and out. But sometimes there'd probably be 200 people that would pass through during that night. And not everybody would perform, but it became like this gathering place, this belonging place, where you could just feel safe. So anyway, so that was a huge part of me just finding people that I felt like we could connect musically, our personalities, all those things, and really always wanted to create a space where everybody felt welcome all the time, whether or not we became best friends or close friends, but where it became safe for people to just enjoy music for the pure purpose of connecting.
And one of my favorite things, and why I wanted to go back and talk about this, is that when you create that vessel or you
Yeah.
create that structure,
Mm.
then everybody else who sort of is wandering in the wilderness
Right.
in Utah or other places have a place to go and be.
Yeah.
Once you create the well, people will come.
Oh
I
yeah.
sometimes say, like, nobody really wants to build the train, but once the train is built, everyone wants to ride it.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, I'm deeply attracted to and feel a kinship to people like you who are like, I see a need. I'm going to build a structure. And,
Yeah.
and for you, that was a place to gather musicians, right? That are sort of all over and put them in the place. And then I specifically want to talk about one of those groups because there was multiple things that happened, but you and friends started Arete.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And specifically because of what you heard me say at the beginning of this podcast, that
Yeah.
I believe that connection and belonging can be an antidote for addiction
Yeah. Yeah.
and loneliness.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Arete and the purpose of that group and what it was doing, because it's sort of all my loves together
Yeah. Well, it's
in
funny
one
because
place.
we from that experience we just decided that we wanted to help me and my friend. We wanted to help kind of develop some of these artists and help them to be successful. And so we kind of it's funny looking back on it now because it was so long ago. It was
Yeah.
probably 11 years ago.
Yeah,
And I look back and I go, oh, I'd do so many things differently,
of course.
which is obviously hindsight is always interesting to look back on. But but so much good was done from that. So we just had these. We essentially signed artists to this organization or group, and we were going to help them to be successful in performing and writing songs, and we were really careful in kind of curating this group of people that we felt like had really good, just good people at the core who wanted to do good in the world, but that just happened to be incredibly talented as well, vocally, and all those things. So we started doing kind of these retreats and these gatherings that would help um, to kind of take out of what is oftentimes in the music and art space, um, of the let's get the attention on me, and we wanted to say, how can we create something that is less about, yes, we're putting music out there, yes, we want to be successful in what we're doing, but at the core, our message is, how can we help to connect with people and for people to feel less lonely, for people to feel greater connection with those around them, and we, to the point where we would do a concert, and the day after, the fans and the artists performing would have an opportunity to go do a service project, so that we are always kind of in the same place. And I think a lot of times, we create these hierarchies of well, I'm a really successful musician, and you're my fan, kind of like a, like,
Yeah, Ben Rector does a great job on one
oh
of
yeah,
his songs about the drivers that drive him
yeah, yeah.
versus the performer that gets there,
I
right?
love that. I
The
love
men who
that.
drive me places. Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, in music and film and really, it's any organization, business, whatever. There's these hierarchies, and we create these ways in which we.
I'm on the stage.
Yeah, I'm
You
on the
bought a ticket.
stage. Yeah, you bought a ticket. And funny enough, I bought a ticket to a show here in Salt Lake many years ago by an artist that I absolutely love, and she was 2 hours late. And as a fan, you're kind of going, do you not like, I actually had to leave because I had like an early morning flight or something. But 2 hours, I mean, that's basically the amount of
The
that's
concert.
the duration of a concert. So when I'm planning on going home at a certain time, so I missed her. I paid this ticket. I should have got, I should have like pursued maybe getting my money back, but I was also like, well, I want to support the artist. But because she was kind of up and coming at the
Yeah.
time. But it really is this feeling sometimes where where it's really easy, if you're in the public eye, to put yourself above. And so we wanted to create a space where not only did you feel belonging and connection, all those things, but you always recognize that you were no better than anybody else.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about that, because I went to some of those high school performances, was that you guys had created a safe enough space for your artists that they could talk about their
Yeah,
own
yeah,
personal addictions, whether
yeah,
it be substance use or pornography or
yeah,
other things,
yeah,
in a pretty candid space
yeah,
where people in the audience, particularly teenagers,
yeah,
which is why this is all my love,
yeah,
all the things I love, could sort of see somebody that they might be putting on a pedestal or what they want to become, and also see that they struggle with these very human frailties or whatever you want to call them, these real addictions. I love the sign for addiction in sign language, which is like this,
oh,
like just
interesting.
being caught, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And then open up a really clear space of like, I'm a human and I
mm-hmm.
have these problems, and I can also, we also belong, and we also serve, and we also create music together. Um, I loved it.
Well, it's funny, because that when we were talking about the whole concept of these concerts, I think I think oftentimes we put up these facades. I mean, I don't. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, because this is what you do,
Yeah.
is help to break down all the things that people are putting up, these walls, to be able to truly express who they are and what they, how they function, and all those things, and the things in their lives that maybe they need the tools to to work some of those things out in their lives, right? As a therapist, and so the importance of being able to share your story in a place that will not be judged or will not be, um, nitpicked at, is really important. And we found that the more so that you can share those things on stage, like you said, the more the audience goes, I know exactly how that feels like, or I can relate to that. I feel less alone
I feel
because
seen.
I feel seen. And I think as a singer, to, I always tell this to people, like, it's really cool when people compliment your voice, your songwriting, or whatever it is, like in the craft of it. But the most meaningful parts of performing and doing music is when somebody sends you a message that's like, I was in a really horrible place, and this song basically kind of saved my life.
Yeah.
And that's where you kind of go, yeah, I need to keep doing this. Whatever scale, whatever measure that is, whether it's independently, big artist, there's something about this thing called music and these songs that when it's coming from a place of vulnerability, it will it will eventually help somebody else to feel like they're less alone.
Yeah. Can I paint a picture for you? And
Sure.
then I want to ask a question.
Sure.
So here you are putting a lot of time and energy into others. You're creating a space for them to show up over a long period of time.
Yeah.
So much so that those of us who love you and love your talent are kind of close to begging. I'm one of those, so I'm going to say that. Hey, Joseph, let's do you.
Yeah.
And the reason why I want to paint this picture of you helping others and creating belonging places is because I want to emphasize on this point that you said, this balance between, and it doesn't matter if you're a writer, if you're a film producer, if you're creative, if you're a business person, like there's this, how do I build community and gathering and belonging? And how do I also take care of myself and pay the bills? Yeah. So here's what I see happening. You're doing this, people are finally like, I mean, you feel the same way, but there's enough people in your life that are sort of collectively saying, it's time for you to do you. Yeah. Yeah. And then you, I think almost reluctantly, that's my outside. Not that you don't want to do you, but it almost feels like from the outside that it feels a little selfish that you would spend the time on you. And then you do that. And again, I'm going to paint my picture and I want to ask you the question. Sure. It seems like to me, this opens this other huge belonging experience, even though you're very focused on you, your album, your someone who's behind the scenes with you, because you have to do all these things when you do this, right? Creating like content that you're putting on social media, raising funds, which is a huge part of it. And it's very focused. From me, it was such a beautiful belonging of the people who you'd helped and the people who loved you getting behind you. The picture that I imagine is you are standing there and there's all these hands on your back, on your head. There's this big, beautiful people. You're in the front because it's your time to do the thing. This is how I see it on the outside. It went from, I'm going to create a belonging place for people to, I'm going to focus on me. And when I focused on me, the belonging showed up for me. I wonder how you see it or how you felt it from the inside.
Yeah. Well, when I was putting together the album, for some reason it was really difficult for me to then kind of say, it's time for you to kind of, and I think because this long held belief of always wanting people to feel like they have a belonging place, that they are loved, all those things, I knew that if I had to focus on myself,
you'd have to let go.
That I'd have to let go, and that some people would not feel like they were a priority in my life anymore, or that I wouldn't be able to spend as much time with some of those people, and which is so conflicted me, because for me the prioritization, you need to have the most important people in your life.
Can I say something real quick?
Sure.
One little trick that I gave in my life that has helped me with this is there's this light paradigm, right? If the light's shining on me, it can't be shining on you, or there's enough light for everybody to be shining. So sometimes when I feel like I have to let go of people or things in order to do other things, instead of being like, oh, I'm not going to be able to see you, you're not going to, I put this little thing in my brain that says, you're going to get your needs met by somebody else.
That's great.
Is that true or not? Yeah. I don't know, but it makes me feel a little bit easier. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally.
To let go of that, to focus on something else, because it's like, I have the faith that your needs are going to get met by somebody else. I don't know. Anyway, back to where you were like, I'm going to have to let go of things in order to focus on me.
Well, what's funny too is, and maybe I'll share this a little bit later coming back to it, but there's things just in the last couple of years that I've been realizing that I think because I was in the scene for 10 years, there were just these things that I started noticing that you go, oh, now I understand why maybe at the beginning I didn't feel as part of that belonging place or whatever, and so that being said, kind of going back to I was creating this album and wanting to share a little bit of myself and what my story was through music. And it really was overwhelming, to say the least, when I have a friend that always, well, maybe I won't share that. Never mind. Cut that out. But no, when you then reach out to people and you go, I'm trying to raise this amount of money for an album. As nervous as I was about doing that, because again, I made it a goal when I was really young that I would never um, expect anything back from anybody, even from friendships. Like I was just like, you know, obviously you don't want people to take advantage of you, but at the same time,
I'm gonna give freely.
I'm gonna give freely, and for the purpose of love and for the purpose of just making sure people feel loved and all those things. So it was really hard for me to ask for something.
Yeah.
And in this,
You
especially,
and many creatives, right?
oh
I just
yeah,
want to do the
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
I don't want to actually ask people to.
Oh, I don't want people to. I don't want to promote or
I don't want
anything
to.
like that. I just want to
I
make
don't want to
music.
impose on people.
Yeah, but this was also in 2020, where things, obviously everything closed down. Things were tight financially for so many people. There were so many elements, constraints that I just was so nervous about, that I was like, you know what though, I just got to do it, because if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, and at least I know that it doesn't happen, and or whatever, and overwhelmingly so, I just felt so supported and overwhelmed with the support that I got, and was able to fund the album when I was in Massachusetts going to record, like the night before it was funded. So I was like, I really got to make this happen, because I'm literally going to the studio next day. I've got to pay these producers and instrumentalists and the studio time and all those things. This has to be funded. And so that experience, I mean, I have videos of me just so full of gratitude.
I'm getting teary-eyed.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I was there when you did the sorry.
That's okay.
Midnight release.
Oh yeah.
And the amount of people, Tommy,
Yeah.
who's our producer,
Yeah.
your family, your friends, the squares on the screen, right?
Oh,
the
yeah.
amount of people that were like showing up, and the music, and that had been on the journey. I guess for me, like I also love when I love to help people shine. Or I love to help
You
people
do. You do.
feel seen. I love to help people arrive at a place, right?
Yeah.
And all of us got to feel a part of the journey of your success, right? It was like, obviously, I mean, emotional. It was so beautiful.
Yeah. Well, what's funny, thank you for saying that, because it really was. So after it was funded, we recorded everything, and just the process of recording, being able to reach out to friends. Like for me, the process of creation, the album, being in the studio with, 10 of my favorite vocalists, singing backup vocals, like that was just like one of the coolest things. And to share these very intimate parts of myself. In fact, I realized that it wasn't selfish. It was very much the opposite, where when you're able to share, it's like the whole world expanded, and all of a sudden all these people are coming and going, I understand like this song and what it means to you, and now it means something to me, and now you're experiencing this whole thing, where you're feeling closer to people than you ever had before, or people that are strangers. I had one person that has become a very close friend in that session where she was singing backup vocals. She didn't know me very much. I just loved her voice. And I won't say who it is, but she came for a certain amount of time, and the session took a little bit longer. But when I was talking about one of the songs, Where You Are, that has a lot of deep meaning for me, I shared what it was about, and she said, oh, she had to go to another session. She said, actually, I'm going to stay, and I'd like to finish off this session with you guys.
I want to be part of this.
I want to be part of this.
Yeah.
So that meant a lot too. But I realized that the more that I shared about my story, about my experiences, about my emotions and my feelings, the more people I felt closer to, And then when we got to the actual release night, we did this incredible like online, and this was again, and it was 2021, May 2021, but the amount of people that hopped on that listening party and we listened to every single song from start to finish with, like, there were people from high school, from church growing up. There were people from college that I hadn't talked to for years that I had no idea were even following my journey. The people I had
People
friends.
showed up.
Oh, people showed up. And it wasn't just, very grateful for the people that gave the big amounts of money, but I had some people that things were really tight. And I know that feeling. Like where funds were tight. I had a friend that she literally sent me $1. And I was like, man,
It adds up.
yeah, but it's also like, I had other people that shared, gave $5, and it was, especially with as tight as things were in 2020, as emotional as things were in 2020, the fact that they felt like that $1 didn't mean anything, but man, it meant so much to me. And even those people that said, I can't share anything. What can I do? I'd say, well, whatever you feel like
Can
you
you
can.
promote?
They shared it on their Facebook. They shared it on whatever. And just the fact that they just did that small effort just meant so much. And because it wasn't about the financial, that's just the means to the end, right? Like that's the thing that we need to be able to get the thing made. But what really got it made was those good people in my life. And I was so grateful for that. It meant so much. And it kind of, I realized that, our belonging, even though we don't see people or talk to people for a long period of time, I feel like those branches go on forever.
Well, you planted the
really
seeds
cool.
and they grew, right?
Well,
If you were to go back to little Joseph,
oh yeah,
that was not fitting in
yeah,
from where you sit right now,
yeah.
and give him some advice about where you would find belonging, what would you say?
I think I would say, uh, there's always people that want to belong to you, and
Oh, I
you to
love
them.
that.
I really believe that,
Yeah.
and it's just about, and not. I would say, don't worry about the people that, for whatever reason. And I'm somebody that I don't ever want to, like. I don't like the whole, you know, the, either shaming culture, or well, you're better off without them.
Yeah.
No, it's just, you just didn't, it wasn't a good fit.
It's okay to let go of those that come in and come out.
Yeah. And some of those people, yeah, there are some people that don't want you to belong to them, or that don't want you in their life. And just be okay with that. It's okay. Like, you're not going to get along with everybody, or they're not going to get along with you. Doesn't mean you can't love them or make sure that they don't feel loved and seen. But sometimes it just isn't a good fit, and that's okay.
Okay, so
yeah,
this is a little harder.
sure.
Because I think we can look back on our lives where we've arrived and we can go back and say, I would have started this earlier, or
Yeah,
I would have done this, right?
Yeah,
From where you're sitting right now
yeah, yeah.
to your future self, Joseph,
Yeah.
what seeds of belonging do you want to plant that will grow then?
Yeah.
That's going to show up.
Yeah. Funny enough, like we were talking
Or seeds
about,
of connection, or seeds of gathering, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call the word, right?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, kind of coming back to this, where we were talking before about, I've been in the scene for 10 years, but you slowly start to realize that things happen in people's lives. They get married. They decide
They get sick.
they don't,
They have
they get
kids.
sick. They change
pivot.
careers. They're like,
Yeah.
you know what? Actually, this music thing isn't my thing. Or I'm going to physically move to a different state, or whatever that is. There, right before I went to, so I just moved back, for those listening, I just moved back from London a couple of months ago. Went to London Film School, and kind of after being in Utah, the music scene for 10 years, still planning on continuing to do music, I've just always wanted to produce film. And so that's kind of a backstory. So took a year off to go to London. Wasn't sure if I was going to stay or come back or whatever that was. But I think because I knew that I was going to be leaving for London, back in September of 2022, I think 6 months before that, I started kind of being reflective and thinking about my time in Utah, and the relationships that I built, and basically kind of this feeling of like, I'm going to move to London and start all over. I had this feeling when I was going to move to London, that I just had this feeling that if I were to come back, that everything would be completely different.
Yeah, you can't step in the same river twice,
Yeah,
right? They
yeah,
say.
yeah. And so it's one of those things where I was really nervous because I had built these friendships. Some of my best friends are here. How is that going to look when I get back? Am I going to keep in contact with these people while I'm gone? And truth is, it's really hard to stay in contact with the people where you're 7 hours ahead.
Yeah.
And even with family members, it was hard. So there were some things that I started to realize kind of like about belonging and the turnover of the music scene and how many people come in and out and how many friendships all of a sudden you kind of go, wait, what happened? Nothing happened. We just are no
Life.
longer in each other's lives anymore.
Yeah.
And what I realized is that, and kind of to your question, where did those seeds of belonging kind of exist now, or where does that leave me now going forward is, you know, I think what I've realized is that there are, in many ways, I always want everybody to feel seen and loved when they're around me, and if I can be that place for people, that's like so important. But it's also really important as you get older, people come and go, and you have to make sure that the people that are most important to you, the people um, that are kind of, you refer to this as kind of your inner circle.
Yeah.
I have too many family members. My circle's huge.
I don't.
And
I
actually,
don't
we
include,
both do. We
I don't
both do.
include my family.
Yeah. So
I consider them a different circle, but
yeah,
that's
yeah.
because I have a very large
Oh
family.
yeah.
So they would overindulge my inner circle. So I give them their own circle, but that's just me.
Yeah. So, and I have to do that too. But like, there's, you really do have to start in many ways. Again, it can work both ways. Creating belonging with everybody that you meet, but at the same time, curating your life, being really intentional about people. And that hasn't always been the case. I've always been one of those, like, everybody's invited and all those things, until you realize that sometimes when you're at the party and you've invited everybody, you actually don't get to connect with
Nobody.
anybody.
Yeah.
And so I've started the process of having to kind of let go of some relationships, and that's
so
hard.
much.
And it's even me saying that, I like don't want to say it because I don't want anybody to feel like they can never belong to me and me to them. But
Does it help, the little tip that I gave you, that
oh,
if they don't
absolutely.
belong to you, they'll belong to somebody else?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the truth is, they already do.
Yeah,
And
that is the
so
truth.
and so you kind of have to go, you know what? There are people that are going to be able to give this person the love that they need, and I don't even say that like in a like some selfish way, as if like I that all the love is,
Yeah.
like, of course not. There's like,
It's
of
a
course not.
breadth and depth issue that we're
Yeah.
talking about,
Yeah.
right?
It's
I can either
bandwidth.
give, yes, I can
Yeah.
give love to all these people, and maybe some of them will give it back,
Yeah.
or we can feel we belong in a gathering.
Yeah.
There's a different feeling of belonging, because we often talk of connection and belonging in big,
Yeah.
but like true connection and belonging is in the small,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's in the depth of the one-on-one,
Yeah.
on the small group, in the marriage, in the parent to child, in the mentor to person, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's really in the small that I feel like we feel the most seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
We feel the most heard, right?
Well, funny enough, there, like, two things can be true at the same time, and I feel like we're living in a world where that people are becoming so polarized. Whatever, they're looking at a lens that is not sustainable, and it's not human, it's not realistic, it's not any of those things. That two things can be true at the same time. I can make sure that everybody that I come in contact with feels loved, and I can also just invite the people that I want to invite to a party or to my whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
Right? Like I can, because the truth is, like you said, it's a bandwidth issue. If, like, I've told this to some people, if my profession could just be being people's friends, I would love that. Like, it'd be so fun.
I know, and I also tell people, if I could get paid to blow wind in people's sails,
Yeah, yeah.
I think I'd be rich.
Oh, you'd be
love it.
a billionaire because you're so good at them.
But I absolutely love it. I want to show up for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
I want to be the first person that buys the thing that you make, right?
Yeah.
Even then, the more people you have, the less opportunity you have to like show up or buy the thing or do the thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There is a loss in deciding like, here's who I'm going to choose, and and here's who's chosen me back.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's such a strength in that.
Oh yeah.
Because that legacy you create, right? You're
Yeah.
my person, I'm your person, or these few people, or this outer circle, or however you decide to do it, right?
Yeah.
It makes
Yeah.
the bandwidth possible.
Yeah. Well, and I will say this, I really like that you brought that up, because I think another part of it too is I've spent a lot of my um, growing up years and in college with, I don't know why, but like in some ways like an obligation,
Mm,
um,
tell me more.
mostly created by some other people that wanted to be my friend,
Mm,
and I
you
loved
didn't
them,
want to
and
be mean.
I didn't want to be mean, but they latched on a little too much,
Oh, yeah.
where all of a
Sucking the
sudden,
life out of you.
yeah, and all of a sudden, and I feel horrible saying that, but really what it comes down to
I
is
Sorry.
no, it's okay.
I
It's
have
okay.
learned that boundaries,
Oh yeah,
right? I
boundaries
mean,
are
I'm
important.
okay that you,
Yeah,
sometimes people are shocked at my like ability to sort of uninvite or hold people at bay, I call it,
yeah, yeah.
or keep because I have learned that if I don't, that boundary
Oh
is
yeah,
essential to myself.
yeah,
Otherwise, it will
yeah,
suck the life out of me. And
yeah,
honest to goodness, like I have learned to be like, okay with that.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
I think you're in that growing space of figuring out
Oh
how
sure.
to do that, right? I
Yeah,
mean, aren't we
yeah.
all?
Well, yeah, but I will say, when there have been moments in the past where I realized that if I keep operating the way I'm doing, I'll have no room for the people that I really really connect with and want to be with. So it's or be friends with, and again, I think that there are different kinds of friends, right? But I found a lot of times where I felt like there was a lot of give on my part, and not as it wasn't as an equal friendship, right? And there's different periods of time. Like sometimes I have needed people in my life more than others, where I've needed like just a lot more support, and vice versa. But there's just like in a marriage, or I'm not married, I've never been married, but what I imagine, what I've seen from good marriages, is that there's a balance. There's
Mm.
you're even at your weakest, you're still kind of like with that person.
Yeah.
You're
They're
moving
strong,
together.
you're weak.
Yeah, yeah,
Your strengths, their weaknesses, complementary,
yeah.
right?
Complementary, and yeah, complementary is a great way of saying that, or expressing that. But in friendships too, I don't think we think about that as much, where I grew up a lot where it was like people would call me all the time and want to hang out, and that's great. That's really wonderful. Um, but sometimes I didn't really want to, but I felt obligated because of this thing. But um, and 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 I really genuinely loved those people.
And sometimes
But
we call that obligation. Can I offer a
sure,
reframe?
absolutely,
In the Anatomy of Peace, the Arbinger Institute
yeah, yeah,
calls, we have these boxes we carry,
yeah, yeah,
and they might call that box a need to be seen as.
yeah,
I need to be seen as somebody
yeah,
who everybody can have access to.
yeah,
I
yeah,
need to be seen as somebody who, if you invite me, I'm a good contributor to the gathering
yeah,
party.
yeah,
I need to, right?
yeah. Well, and
What
I
happens
actually,
when we need to be seen as, though?
yeah. Well, I actually really appreciate you bringing that up too, because I think that there has been a tendency in the past where I feel like, well, I need to be somebody that can be there for people 24/7 all the time. But at a certain point, you realize that if you are everything to everybody all the time, or if you're trying to be there for everybody, your bandwidth gets so stretched thin that now you have nothing to offer. You can't fully show up for one person because it's splintered between 20 different people.
Yeah.
And so that's where it comes in, where you have to go, I have to let go of some people. You
Yeah.
have to,
I want to
yeah,
share, and this might be a little bit uncomfortable for you. I don't
sure,
know.
sure,
I
sure.
want to share an experience about our friendship
Oh,
because
sure,
this is my
sure.
podcast, and
Yeah,
I want to offer to people like a real vulnerable space. But
sure,
there,
sure.
there was a time when, so you're a performer,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I, in some ways, am also a performer.
Oh, yeah, totally,
I
totally.
run a choir.
Yeah,
And there was a time in our friendship where I was inviting you a lot to go to this choir,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I didn't feel like you were showing up.
yeah, yeah.
You were showing up at a lot of places because I was going at all the places that you were performing, but
Yeah,
you weren't
yeah,
showing up in my place.
totally, totally.
And part of belonging and connecting, I believe, in real friendships is to say, hey, I value you,
Yeah, yeah,
and you're not, I don't think you're showing up for me.
yeah, yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do very
And
clearly.
I would love for you to share, how did that feel?
Oh, yeah. It,
And what did that do you think, for our friendship?
yeah. Well, it's funny because first of well, to answer the first question, how did that make me feel? I felt horrible because in my mind, kind of what we're just
Which
talking about.
wasn't my intent.
Oh
Hopefully, we
no,
know
no,
that.
no.
Yeah.
Oh no. But I think it's a very healthy response when you feel you should feel a certain way if you feel like you've disappointed somebody,
Yeah.
Where
And
where it's
accountability, right?
yeah, but it's funny because it wasn't just that that's I mean, you were feeling that way, but I remember specifically I had double booked myself. We had this thing that I had kind of put on there, and it wasn't that because I think it would have been better if I didn't show up
Yeah.
and just said, "Hey,
Maybe.
I've created this other event that I need to be." I double booked myself. I should have been able to, or I should have
Oh, you
said,
came late and left
I
early.
came
That's
left
right.
and left early, and I missed your solo,
Yeah.
and that was really important to you. And so I at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was that I came to kind of quote unquote show up,
Yeah.
and but left in a crucial important part that was important to you, right? So it would have been better for me to say, hey, I shouldn't have come, you know. I should go to, I can't make it because I created this other thing. But in my mind, I was like, yeah, I got to be there for Kylee, and I also got to do this thing. And that's where
The
we're talking
multitasking,
about
right?
before, where it's prioritization of people, right? Like you have to put people that are most important to you first, and that was a great lesson.
And show
I'm
up
not,
fully, right?
yeah, yeah, and I'm not uncomfortable sharing that at
Yeah.
all because that's very important to relationships, and one in which I think those older relationships that I was talking about, where it felt one sided, I probably didn't communicate as well as saying, "Hey, I either I don't feel like I feel like I'm giving a lot and not getting not that you're like expecting something back, but at a certain point you kind of go, I feel like you can't you can't you can only give so much until you're kind of empty,
Yeah.
right?
One-sided bridge. I
Yeah,
call it building a one.
yeah,
I do want to say it was not easy. This is not, some people
yeah,
think it's easy for me to do critical feedback, maybe because I'm a therapist. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah,
Being a therapist is all about being a listener
yeah, yeah.
and reflecting to people, right? So
Sure.
critical feedback is still hard for me, like anybody
Oh,
else.
sure,
To be
sure.
able to say is very vulnerable. To be able to
Oh,
say,
yeah,
I need more of you.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but I want to say, the reason why I could say that is because I had shown up consistently for
Oh,
you, right?
totally,
It
totally.
was clear
Yeah,
to me in our friendship that
yeah.
like I had prioritized you and put you
Oh,
in a
absolutely.
good place. So I felt okay to say,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
not like from even from a needy place, but from like,
Oh
hey,
no.
friend,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
show
yeah,
up, be
yeah.
present,
Oh
fully
yeah,
present,
yeah,
and know that I want that, right? And
yeah.
and so
Totally.
initially you felt ouch, and then and then
So yeah, so I felt ouch. I like that. No, but it's funny because talking about this is so. I think, and we have a friend, Andy Proctor,
yeah,
who's studying
adult
adult relationships
friendships,
and friendships. He's
that's
getting his
PhD. Yeah.
PhD in it. I think that we do not look at adult friendships like we should, in that they are real things and that they affect us very deeply,
Yeah.
and that
And that
we
they're give
still
and
need,
take
yeah, that
and
we need belonging, we need friendship and fellowship and all those things. But what happened to me, that was actually a really important part because I think too, grateful for friends that give you the benefit of the doubt, but I'm also really grateful for friends that are like that call you out because that's we're all human. We make mistakes. We need, and I say call out not in like a I gotcha, but more of so legitimately like I need you to know that this
I
hurt
have a
me.
higher expectation of
Yeah, I
that.
have a higher expectation. I think that's really important. So what it did for me, it was like one of the first times that a friend had actually said something like that. And for me, I internalized that. And not only did I say, I'm never going to, I want to be better about if I'm going to show up to someplace, I'm going to show up
And be
and be
present.
present. And if I can't make it, then I'm going to be honest about that. I'm going to say I cannot be here, just so that at least they know that I'm know what to expect,
Yeah.
and that expectation is real, and those boundaries are real, and all those things. But I would say because of that, it strengthened our friendship, and now I know that if Kylee invites me to something, if I'm going to come, I'm going to come, and if I can't make it, I'm going to let you know. and either way, like it's going to be fine,
Totally.
I think, like you talk a lot, like belonging, being seen, being heard in, it's a feeling between, you know, two friends, or any relationship. I think, sometimes we have to articulate what we need to be
Yeah.
able to feel seen.
Advocate,
So
right?
yeah,
Can I
yeah,
tell you what happened on the other side of that?
sure, sure.
Fear and trepidation and
Oh,
lots of
sure.
crazy, like, can I send this?
Yeah,
Rewriting the text many times. I'm a writer, right? Getting
yeah,
it succinct. Asking a friend, can you read this?
yeah.
Is this filled with love?
Oh
It,
yeah, 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 yeah,
then sending it to
yeah,
you. Then knowing what was probably going to happen. But then seeing you at the next season fireside.
oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Fully present right there, right?
Totally,
I
totally.
think that we don't get what we want if we don't ask.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
how do friends read our minds? Like, how do they know? I do
Oh
a
yeah,
million things. How would you know that that would matter to me?
yeah,
Like, that you show up. I mean, I want you to think that it would matter without me having to ask you, right? This is the idea
yeah,
that we're like,
yeah.
Joseph, just show up. And
Sure.
I show up and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
right?
Totally, totally.
Um, and I think that part of deepening our feeling known, I guess
Yeah.
I'm gonna call it
Oh
that,
yeah,
to feel
yeah,
known, is to say, you you hurt me, or like
yeah, yeah,
you there was an expectation I had, good or bad, and you didn't meet it. I think it's a
yeah,
good expectation. And then the other person saying, I see you, I own it,
yeah,
I'm going to make a change.
yeah,
I don't think there's anything more powerful in any kind of relationship than to have both sides of that.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think, how do you grow? You know,
yeah.
if in my belonging or my being seen or my friends, it's an echo chamber.
Mm,
If everybody always makes me feel good about myself, how do I grow? Right?
yeah,
If I can't every once in a while be like, ouch, that's what I call it. Oh,
yeah,
in my
yeah,
friendships, then maybe I don't really know what they need or want. Maybe
yeah,
I'm just playing a role. You know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, just this, like this conversation. Um, I'm thinking about friendships from the past or friendships currently where I feel like, oh man, I think I dropped the ball,
Yeah.
And if any of you are listening, I'd like to say I'm sorry.
I love you.
And I love you, and I am trying to be better, um, but it is this. I think it's okay to recognize that. Yeah, just the recognition that we're going to disappoint our friends, and that the ones that really, um, you fight for the things that, I'm nervous about saying this.
It's
You
okay.
fight for the things that really matter to you,
Yeah.
right? And so,
You put your energy, your time.
yeah, yeah. But I also know that if people are going through some pretty heavy things, sometimes they can't show up.
Yeah.
And I have a couple of friends that I would say, um, in recent years, they're so overwhelmed with so much that I've seen them just not be able to be there, right?
Yeah.
But I also realize that a
But
lot of,
times and seasons,
oh,
right?
times and
And
seasons,
so
yeah,
you're like,
yeah,
I'm okay that you can't show up for me right now. I'll
yeah,
show up for you.
yeah,
You
yeah.
don't bank it for them later for them to show
Oh
up for
no,
you.
no,
But a really good true friendship says that they know that already.
yeah,
They know
yeah,
they're receiving,
yeah, yeah,
and that there's going to come a time when they are going to be strong enough or are able enough to give,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And that's symbiotic. I don't have to say it. I'm not collecting dues.
yeah.
I'm not
Oh
like
yeah, I
I'm
hate
putting
that
in so that I
whole
can
idea.
take out. It's not transactional,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But in reality, it is. You do put in bids of connections for people. You do put in, jelly beans in the jar of the relationship so
yeah,
that
yeah,
when it comes time to be receiving, you can also be receiving, right? You
yeah,
can't be in a good relationship. I don't think you can matter. I keep saying the same things, right? To be seen, to be heard, and to matter in a relationship where you're only building your side of the bridge.
yeah,
Eventually you
yeah.
fall in.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a good.
You
That's
know?
a good point. The experience that I had, we had, where you kind of let me know that I had disappointed you, and that it was not like, it didn't feel good, right? That changed some of my other friendships, where now
Interesting.
I felt like I could approach some of my other good friends and say, hey, when you do this, it, it,
It was permission giving.
yeah, it upset me, or it made me, nothing can make you feel something, but meaning like, I felt this from that experience, right? And as a friend, because I love you so much, I'm gonna let you know this thing.
And there's a
Yeah.
feeling that you're going to stick your neck out, right? And
Yeah.
then somebody could lop that right off,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And when they don't, you
Yeah.
realize, okay, they are the friend. I
Yeah.
could give them critical feedback. I
Yeah.
knew I could, and they validated that they could,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because there
Yeah.
is a fear that you say to somebody, I don't like how you treated me, and they say, okay, well, I'll go away.
Peace out. Yeah. Well, and
I only want to be around people that make me feel good, and you just made me feel bad.
yeah. Well, and I mean, not to comment on like overall things, but I think that part of what is happening, because I do think this applies in general, what happened in 2020 was so isolating
Yeah.
in every aspect, in every way, which then begets, like, when we're in isolation, it begets these, you're not with people, you're not belonging to anything. And so you start maybe resenting people that you haven't seen or whatever. I mean, I had so many friends that during that period of time in 2020 and beyond, where we just like kind of lost contact, but because of different reasons. And I think that what really is needed in the world is for us to help create belonging one with another.
I have two more questions for you.
Sure.
One specific question. I have kind of a working null hypothesis about this podcast. I have some ideas about what people can do when they have a belonging place. What they need to have in their belonging place in order to be successful, and vice versa, right? So as I'm interviewing and talking to people, there's these things that I already have in my mind that are like, oh, this is why this person could do this. So one of those things in my hypothesis is that in order for somebody to feel like they can make big changes in their life, or in order for them to feel like they can fail, which means they can start something, they need to have a safety net, whether that's financial, emotional, whatever. Does that make sense so far, the setup?
Sure.
Okay, so there's this book. I feel like you would love this book.
Yeah, I've never
And
heard of
it is called The Trying.
Hmm.
It is written by Komi Yamada, illustrated by Elise Hurst. And I'm not actually going to read the book,
Sure.
but you can see that the title is Trying.
Yeah.
It's about this boy who wants to be a sculptor. At the very end of this book, there's this quote. When we make it, oh, by the way,
That's really cool.
just
Illustrations
like
too.
very beautiful illustrations,
Yeah.
minimalist, right?
Oh,
Which we
yeah.
love.
It's beautiful.
At the very end, it says this: when we make it safe to fail, we make it safe to succeed. And as somebody who I feel like is still in their story of becoming, but that has quite a bit of success, I wonder what you think about that quote.
Yeah. I love it, first of all. It's interesting because a lot of times fear has gotten in the way of me even trying. You know, it can, I mean,
I know this about you.
Yeah, it can really paralyze.
But not so much that you don't, though, right?
Oh, yeah. But you still do it.
You just did a whole program in a different country, right?
Yeah. There's a significant amount of just starting. In fact, I have a friend, Richie Norton, who
love him.
Wrote the
Hey,
power.
Richie.
The power of starting something stupid.
Yeah.
Is kind of shifted my mentality on a lot of things. Then he just came out with another book called Anti-Time Management, and also kind of shifts your thinking about how we see things and how we see the world. And something that I've been bringing up a lot is Anti-Time Management book is a lot of times many people, I should say, spend most of our time building the moat, and we never get to the castle.
Yeah.
And Richie says, build the castle first.
Sterling Sill, it's one of these books that I have back here from Leadership, says most ideas die en route.
Oh, yeah.
Even before you even build the moat, they die, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And I've brought that up to so many people, and I think that when I say that, a lot of people have they either have like your reaction, like, oh, this is amazing, or they're like, well, that
I'm not going to start.
That doesn't seem realistic, or you're in a privileged position to be able to do that, or something like that. But I'm sitting here thinking to myself, but if I but I don't, the purpose of the moat is to protect the castle.
Right.
So, but if you have no castle, then you're basically building nothing.
Yeah.
And so having spent a lot of my past life um, not moving forward on things because I was afraid or whatever, um, I agree with the whole, you have to create a safety place
Yeah.
to try, but also you have to understand that most of the time that safety net is not always going to be there. There's a lot of risk in just trying. But the truth is, it will show up.
Yeah.
It really will.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you think you have a consistent safety net though? Like what would you consider or
Yeah.
who would you consider it never changes?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think at different moments of my life, there have been times where, I mean, even right now, there's some projects that I'm working on where I've had to go, okay, yeah, I need a safety net, but I built that over time. But there was a time when building that safety net was the hard thing,
Yeah.
you know. And so when I say safety net, it's not even, you know, a lot of times in music you'll hear people say you can't have a backup plan. And in some ways I agree with that, in other ways I don't. Because you do have to be willing to, in any career, you're putting yourself out there. But if you do have a way to create um, some security, I think that's important, or some
What if we changed the
safety.
backup plan? What if we
Sure.
changed, what if we took the focus and what if the backup plan wasn't a thing that you do in your career, but it
Yeah.
was like your safety net, which I would consider like going back to the beginning of the podcast,
Yeah.
I would consider one of your constant, never changing safety nets being your family.
Oh, totally.
I even made the
totally.
comment like that you can always go home.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
this is a belief I've come to know about you and your family.
Oh, absolutely.
If you, which is a privilege.
Yeah. Oh, it
If
is.
you can always go home and know,
Yeah.
you can always fail.
Yeah.
Which means you could always
Yeah.
succeed, right? Because at any point you could move home, right?
It's true. Oh,
Like,
totally.
You could,
Totally.
if you lost money or your job,
Yeah.
you could go home, right?
Yeah.
I
There's.
think that, what does that do to somebody
Yeah.
if
I
they
guess.
always know
Yeah.
they're loved or they're all like, I have the firm belief that means you can fail a lot more than somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
Which means you can succeed. I think. Do you think that's true? A
I
lot
think-
more than maybe the other person, because part of success is failure, right?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. You can't be successful without failing. In fact, when I'm teaching my students, there's so much of vulnerability when you're singing that you can't get to the desired result until you have
Made a
cracked
big fool of yourself.
in front of me and went flat and sharp and all sorts of stuff.
This is why shout out to vocal teachers who are basically therapists, coming from a therapist.
I mean, there's some truth to that. Though I always tell my students I'm not a therapist. I'm not a therapist. But okay, in that sense, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think we always think of our safety net as money a lot of times.
Oh yeah.
And when if you change the focus to like what you have and who you are, and I guess because of the focus of this podcast, where you belong, then you can do that.
So I think that, like, putting it in that context of having a safe place to fail, that really does set you up for success for sure. Like, absolutely. But part of that too is that there are some people out there though that they kind of don't have anything left. I recognize there's people out there that don't even have family. They're kind of, I mean, how many stories have we heard of people that are on the streets and they're like, you know what? I got nothing to lose, which in many ways, kind of to the point, is a safe place to be like, you know what? I got nothing to lose.
To go from the ground up.
I can only go up now. In a way that is a safe place because all you can do is go up. And so I
think it is a place of privilege to be able to say,
absolutely.
I know that I can fail. One of the things I have loved watching you and your friendship is having a great fear to change and to make changes, almost tripping over yourself sometimes. And what's the right answer? I feel like you're a very dutiful child of God, I guess I would say. and I mean that with all respect. God, I know you have a plan for me and I want to do my utmost to be on the path that you have for me. But as a friend watching you, sometimes I feel like that almost trips you up on making the right decision. And one of the things I've loved watching is when you have been willing to sort of shake that off or pivot and be brave and decide to maybe fail,
Yeah.
which means I'm going to try something new.
Yeah. Well, my cousin.
I mean, maybe
Yeah.
succeed is also a way to say that, but that's what
Yeah.
we say when we're trying something new, or we step into a program in a different country, in a different area. When we say, I've always wanted to be in film, I'm going to go make it happen, and
Yeah.
maybe it'll work for me and maybe it won't.
Yeah.
When I put a lot of money in and a lot of time in, right?
Yeah.
And I don't have an actual outcome, there's not this pop out thing that's happening on the other side, but I'm willing to do it. I love that. I'm actually addicted to starting something that matters. There's a book called Blake Mykowski, I think, from Tom's. He wrote a book years ago, that's called Start Something That Matters.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
at any point in your life, right?
Yeah.
At any point in your life, you can pivot, you can do something else. I've watched you do that many times in your
Yeah.
life and
Yeah.
just admire that.
Well, my cousin, Michael Jones, who I love, I was talking to him several years ago. This is probably 10 years ago, and talking about some of the projects that I was kind of trying to get off the ground. And, I think that some of the fear comes in when we think we have to get it right the first time.
Yeah.
And I will always remember this. He said, progress is messy. And he's, a successful businessman and all those things.
Equals therapy.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I get that on my wall?
No, but
it's never clean. It's so messy.
Oh yeah. Well, even relationships. If we if we go
gosh.
through our lives and we never have to confront a friendship or a family member about anything,
Yeah.
I don't think that that's really life. We don't really grow at all. And so we have to, if you're going to make progress, you're going to have to get in the weeds. You're going to have tough conversations with people. And even in business ventures or organizational belonging, one thing comes to my mind that I think is really, really important, that taught me a huge lesson in what it means to belong.
Yeah.
And it's not it was when I was at BYU-Hawaii in the choir, one of the most diverse universities you'll ever go to, just people from all over the world, different countries, different cultures, different dialects, different languages, different tone qualities in their singing voice, different ways in which they have understood music. Some people come from a culture that didn't have like reading music,
Right.
and other people, that's all they do. Some people
can't do by ear, yeah.
improvisation, all those things. We have tall people, shorter people, all those things, everything in between, personalities, all those things. But what was really cool is that what brought us all these different people together was not because we were the same.
Right.
What was beautiful about the quality and the tone of that choir that was so powerful is that everybody had their own experience and their personality, their tone quality, all those things. And it taught me that in order to belong to something and to feel connected to something does not mean that you have to think the same way, does not mean that you have to look the same way or behave the same way.
Believe the same way.
Yeah, but the power that the choir had when we would go to different places to perform. We went to China and Mongolia, and a lot of the things that was said was, it's amazing how many people you have that are so different from one another, but how unified you all are in not only the message, but what a beautiful sound was created. And I think that when I think about people that belong, and that I belong to somebody or they belong to me, we're not creating some place where, everybody looks the same, but it's more, do we all want to feel loved and seen? And yes, the answer is yes.
It's a receiving and giving symbiotic relationship, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm a word person. So one of my things I love about what you just described in that culture, ohana.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Aloha.
Yeah.
These are all in different cultures. They have a name for this belonging that I'm talking about. In Fiji, they say bulavanaka, which is like, you are mine and I am yours, right? Yeah. And this is one of the things that I love about certain cultures. If you know that you all belong and you're all of one purpose, then you can generate. It's generative, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. My last question for you, Joseph, is we all have something unique that we can offer to that's in our story. And as we've kind of gone through your life story and kind of talked about some of your experiences, I'm wondering if there's anything specific that you feel called to share as far as, different things we've hit on, like gathering, belonging, how connection helps us through addiction, mental health, different things like this. Is there anything you feel like we missed, or any message that you feel like you want to share to our audience?
I think it's funny because as you were asking the question, I
Yeah.
was listening.
Yeah, no.
But I was also kind of
Thinking.
going, what would it be? And I think, I mean, there's so many things that I would love to share.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that I wish that we could move forward in um, is I think that if we, and I'm not talking in some kumbaya way,
Right.
or some like transactional way or whatever. One of my favorite books is called The Law of Love by Steve Young.
Love it.
And I think that we are looking at through a lens right now in our world that is deeply divisive, and even me saying that, somebody might say, "Oh, well,
And deeply
you
selfish, right?
yeah," or they, even saying that the world's divided, somebody's going to come in and say, "Well,
Actually, we're together over here."
yeah, like yeah, or well, that's easy for you to say because you've been blessed with a good family, or all these things. I would say we really need to get to a place where in every single interaction, and I'm not saying nobody does this perfectly.
Yeah.
I am not saying I do this perfectly, but we do not lose our love for people
Yeah.
and humanity. And I want to say that one of the most incredible films that I've ever seen, I saw 2 or 3 weeks ago, called Origin by Ava DuVernay. And regardless of how anybody might look at that film from a political lens or a social lens or whatever, I don't know what it is. I'm not a behavioral scientist. But what I do know is that we do this thing where we put ourselves above others, or we put ourselves beneath each other. And what we really just need to look at each other through a lens of pure humanity, pure love. And that I see pure humanity and pure love in conservatives. I see it in liberals. I see it in a lot of people that I don't see eye to eye with on a lot of things. But I think that if we can start looking at each other truly through a human lens, through kind of what we were talking about before, through a divine lens, regardless of whether somebody listening believes in God or not, it's a beautiful idea to think that we are all brothers and sisters.
And we would treat people differently, right?
Oh,
if we thought that.
Yeah.
I love this, Joseph. One of the things I used to say a lot is, who do you think has contributed more to the world? Mother Theresa or like Bezos?
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
One has money and could possibly put that money to, let's say Bill Gates even. Let's not use Bezos. I think there was a time when he paid for lots of computer labs for lots of schools that they need, right? And then I think Mother Teresa's holding the dying.
Oh, yeah.
She's physically in the trenches, right?
Right.
And we need both.
Yeah.
If we only have Mother Teresa's, then how do we get the technology that we need to have to solve cancer, right?
Yeah.
And if we only have Bill Gates and they have the money and they have the things, who's going to hold the hands that are hanging low, right? And I think I love this, what you say. If we in our own corner of our world, if we see everybody as something they have to offer and something that they're good at rather than whatever we see them on, right? What a world.
Well, and just to bring this in too, is I grew up on Mr. Rogers.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
And if those listening haven't seen the documentary, Won't You Be My Neighbor, it's just incredible. But what he was able to do, you could tell he truly valued humans, like human beings, no matter who you were. And I think that if we're able to, he talked a lot about look for the helpers.
Yeah.
I see people.
And everybody's my neighbor.
That is a huge way. Like that's just such an incredible lens to look through the world, because then you're not looking at somebody that might seem different than you in every single way possible, but that they are your neighbor. Or people that are posting online. I've had to unfollow people. We've talked about this
Yeah.
before, because for me, first of all, social media is not real life.
Yeah.
People in real life are doing more so than just people posting about things
Right.
on real life.
That's not arriving versus becoming, right?
Yeah.
You get to see the coiffed
Yeah.
version of what's
Yeah.
happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. But if we can, if what you're posting isn't pursuing, or if you're not actually being a part of the solution,
Yeah.
then maybe you need to internalize and kind of look inside and go, how can I actually help? What's actually going to help this situation?
Yeah.
How can I be a part of the solution? Because we have too many people that are so, we first of all, we don't know all the information. You have to, there's so many crazy things happening in the world that we don't see. And so if you can just be a helper, if you can look at people the way that you would like to be looked at, my mom would always say, treat others as you'd like to be treated. The golden rule is huge in our house.
Yeah.
And really truly love, I say unconditionally. We're human. We don't always do it with boundaries. Yeah. Boundaries. Nobody's going to take advantage. But then I think that we would start to see a lot of changes. And that's something that genuinely you just look at and you go, the research behind actual solutions and how people are able to build bridges, it is not the combativeness online. It's not your comments disparaging somebody online.
It's not your armchair expert.
Yeah, it's not going to do anything. As much as you think that your comment out of 1,000 comments on somebody's page is going to do anything, it's not. What is going to do something different is go love your neighbor who has nothing to do with you, that they don't offer you anything.
Yeah, no transaction.
Yeah, go do something for them. Yeah. Go, whatever that might be. Somebody at a party, something that I love about my siblings and my parents, I can't tell you how many times I would see an older sibling go over. You told me you're going to get me to cry. But where they would go over and be with the person that nobody in the cafeteria wanted to sit with, or that they would reach out to somebody that is often looked at as less than. And not usually, it would be moments that I would catch them and nobody was looking.
Right.
It's those moments, like, are you going to be kind when nobody's looking? Are you going to give, food to somebody on the street when nobody is going to give you anything back, Because at the end of the day, if you don't see those people as your divinely, whether you believe in this or not, where, I believe that if you can see every single human being as your brother and sister, that changes everything. Yeah. Then it doesn't matter what political party you are. It doesn't matter what belief system they're coming from, what religion they are, what not, or if they believe in God or not. If you can look at somebody and say that will change the world because it changed you, And so because it changed you, then you're then able to go out and do the same for other people and make sure, like you said, that everybody belongs to you and they belong, and vice versa. Yeah. And and this is kind of those two things can exist at once. Making somebody feel like they belong in a 2-minute conversation and still never see that person again. Yeah. I've had that experience so many times where somebody took the time after a talk that they gave or a singer that I loved, where they took the time for 2 minutes and I just was able to express, I had nothing to offer them. Yeah. I was able to express how much their music or their message meant to me, and they acknowledged that. And I mean, it means the world, So
I love it.
So that's a long answer.
Yeah,
to your
thank
question,
you, Joseph. And I'm going to invite our audience members to go do an act of service.
Yeah.
In honor of this conversation. Joseph, thank you so much for coming to the
Oh,
Belonging
thank you.
Place.
Thank you.
I have been wanting to have you since the inception of the podcast.
That's awesome.
Having dear friends of mine come and talk about the things of their hearts. So appreciate you.
Well, thank you. It's honored to be here. So